The Dominion had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems, enslaved dozens of species, and never once faced true resistance. Their method was simple and cruel. Find young civilizations before they could grow strong, strike fast, harvest their worlds, move on to the next target. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the blue planet grow larger on his viewing screen. Earth, a small world circling an average star in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. His scouts had been watching it for decades, and their reports all said the same thing. The natives were primitive. They had barely reached their own moon. They fought endless wars among themselves. They were perfect targets. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we have completed our scan of the planet. Population approximately 8 billion. Technology level is primitive. Chemical propulsion rockets. Basic nuclear capability. No planetary shields. No orbital defense platforms." And made a sound of satisfaction. This would be easy. His fleet of 200 warships could glass the entire planet in hours if needed. But that was wasteful. Dead slaves produced nothing. Dead worlds yielded no resources. The smart approach was to demonstrate overwhelming power, accept surrender, and begin harvesting. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. "Standard conquest frequency, all languages." The communications officer worked his console. "Channel open, Commander," and stepped forward, his tall form casting a shadow across the deck. He had given this speech many times before. It always worked. Primitive species were predictable in their fear. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. I am High Commander and of the Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender all military assets. You will submit to collection and processing. Resistance is not advised. You have one planetary rotation to comply. Failure to surrender will result in the destruction of your largest population centers. This is your only warning." He cut the channel and settled into his command chair. Now came the waiting, the panic, the frantic attempts at negotiation, the eventual acceptance. He had seen it all before. Some species begged. Some tried to bargain. A few attempted futile attacks with their primitive weapons. In the end, they all surrendered. Hours passed, and expected communications from Earth leaders by now, pleas for mercy, offers of tribute, something. Instead, his communication officers reported only silence from official channels. But something else was happening, something strange. "Commander," the intelligence officer said, his voice uncertain, "we are detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface." Define unusual. Military forces across multiple nations are standing down from their conflicts with each other. We are seeing emergency communications between governments that were hostile to each other just hours ago. They appear to be cooperating. And leaned forward. This was new. Usually, invaded species fell into greater chaos when threatened. Their existing conflicts intensified as fear took hold. Leaders blamed each other. Militaries fragmented. It made conquest easier. But the humans were doing the opposite. Reports continued to flow in, each one more puzzling than the last. Nations that had pointed weapons at each other for generations were now sharing military intelligence. Scientists from rival countries were pooling research. Factories that made competing products were coordinating production. Religious leaders who disagreed on everything were issuing joint statements. "What are they doing?" and demanded. "Unknown, Commander, but satellite imagery shows military assets being relocated, not for attack against each other. They appear to be preparing a unified defensive posture." This was wrong. This was not how primitive species behaved. They should be panicking, not organizing. They should be fighting each other for survival, not banding together. 12 hours into the deadline, a single message arrived from Earth. It came from something called the United Earth Emergency Council, an organization that had not existed the day before. A human female appeared on screen. She was small by standards, with dark hair and steady eyes. She did not look afraid. She looked angry. "Commander N, I am General Maya, speaking on behalf of all nations of Earth. We have received your demands. We reject them." And felt a flash of annoyance. Defiance was not unusual in the first hours. It would fade. "Furthermore," the human continued, "we have a counter-demand. You will remove your fleet from our solar system within 24 hours. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war, and we will respond accordingly." The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Was this creature serious? Her species had chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They had plasma cannons and shields that could withstand asteroid impacts. The technological gap was like comparing a stone axe to an orbital strike platform. And laughed. It was genuine amusement. "This species has courage," he admitted. "Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. They will learn." "Should we respond, Commander?" the communications officer asked. "No, let them spend their final hours in false hope. When the deadline expires, we will demonstrate what happens to those who refuse the Dominion." He settled back in his chair, dismissing the humans from his thoughts. They were insects who had briefly forgotten their place. Tomorrow they would remember. But something nagged at him. Something about the speed of their unification. Something about the look in that female's eyes. She had not looked like a leader making a desperate bluff. She had looked like a predator that had finally found prey worth hunting. And pushed the thought aside. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had crushed species far more advanced than these humans. Whatever tricks they attempted would fail against might. As the deadline approached, his fleet moved into attack formation. 200 warships arranged themselves above Earth's major population centers. Weapons charged, targeting systems locked. Everything was ready for a demonstration of power that would shatter human resistance forever. On the planet below, 8 billion humans watched the sky. They had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had never agreed on politics, religion, economics, or even basic facts. They had seemed hopelessly divided. But now something had changed. Now they had a common enemy. Now they had a shared purpose. And now, for the first time in human history, they were truly united. They did not understand what they had done. They thought they had cornered a primitive species. They did not realize they had kicked a hornet's nest. They did not know that humanity's endless internal conflicts had served a purpose. Those wars had been training. Those struggles had been practice. Every battle humans had fought against each other had prepared them for this moment. The deadline expired. They opened fire, and humanity rose to meet them. The biggest mistake the aliens ever made was not attacking Earth. It was assuming that humanity would react like every other species they had conquered. They expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected easy victory. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first plasma bolts fell on military bases across 3 continents: Moscow, Beijing, Washington, London, Delhi. They expected these strikes to break human resistance before it could begin. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected surrender within hours. They got chaos, but not the kind they wanted. Within minutes of the first attack, something happened that they could not understand. Human soldiers who had been enemies their entire lives began working together. Russian and American officers shared command frequencies. Chinese and Indian troops coordinated movements. Old hatreds were set aside like yesterday's garbage. The enemy of my enemy was now my brother. General Maya watched the reports from her underground command center. The first strikes had hurt. Thousands dead. Important bases destroyed. But humanity was still standing, and now the real fight could begin. "All units, this is Central Command," she broadcast on the unified frequency. "Initiate protocol Hornet's Nest. I repeat, Hornet's Nest is active." Across the globe, humanity's response began. They had expected human militaries to mass together to form large targets that could be easily destroyed from orbit. Instead, human forces scattered. They broke into small groups. They disappeared into cities, forests, mountains, and tunnels. They became ghosts. High Commander and watched the surface with growing frustration. "Where are their armies?" he demanded. "Why are they not gathering to defend their cities?" "They appear to be dispersing, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "Our targeting systems are having difficulty tracking them. They are moving in patterns we have not seen before." "Impossible. No species fights like this. Armies need organization, supply lines, command structures. Without these things, they cannot resist." But the humans were resisting, and they were doing it in ways they had never encountered. When ground troops landed to secure major cities, they expected the remaining human defenders to flee or surrender. Instead, they walked into nightmares. Sergeant Al led his squad through the empty streets of a human city. The buildings were damaged but standing. The streets were silent. His scanner showed life signs everywhere, but he could not locate the sources. The humans were hiding, using their primitive technology to mask their positions. "Stay alert," he ordered his troops. "They cannot hide forever. We will flush them out." A sound came from his left. He turned, weapon raised. Nothing, just an empty doorway. Then the shooting started. Humans appeared from windows, from rooftops, from holes in the ground. They fired weapons that should have been useless against armor, but they were not aiming at armor. They were aiming at joints, at visors, at exposed equipment. They had studied for less than a day, and they had already found the weak points. Al watched 3 of his soldiers fall before he could even identify the attackers. He fired back at a window, but the shooter was already gone. Another burst came from behind him. Another soldier fell. "Retreat," he screamed into his communicator. "Fall back to the landing zone." But the landing zone was 2 kilometers away, and the humans were everywhere. The squad ran through the streets, taking fire from all directions. Humans darted between buildings, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They used the terrain like they had been born to fight in it. Every doorway was a potential ambush. Every window was a potential sniper nest. Every shadow held death. Of the 30 soldiers in Al's squad, only 7 made it back to the landing zone. Similar reports came from across the planet. Troops were being ambushed, isolated, and destroyed. They were stronger than humans. They were faster. Their weapons were superior. None of it mattered. The humans did not fight fair. They did not fight by any rules they understood. High Commander and received the casualty reports with disbelief. In the first week of ground operations, he had lost more soldiers than in his previous 5 conquests combined. The humans were not surrendering. They were not running. They were hunting his troops like animals. "This is impossible," he said to his officers. "They are primitives. How are they doing this?" His intelligence officer had been researching human history. What he found disturbed him deeply. "Commander, these creatures have been fighting each other for their entire existence. They have developed forms of combat that we have never seen. They call it guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, psychological operations. They have been perfecting the art of killing for thousands of years. Against each other, they have never faced a real enemy." "With respect, Commander, perhaps that is the problem. They have been fighting the most dangerous enemy possible, themselves. Every weapon they have, every tactic they know, was designed to defeat human intelligence. We are not smarter than them. We are just different. And different is something they know how to handle." And wanted to dismiss this analysis, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. His soldiers were dying at rates that should have been impossible. Human resistance was not weakening. It was growing stronger. And there was something else, something that terrified him more than the battlefield losses. The humans were learning. In the first days, they had fought with chemical weapons and primitive explosives, effective but limited. Now, 2 weeks into the invasion, reports came of humans using captured equipment. Not just using it, modifying it, improving it. A soldier's plasma rifle had been found on a dead human gorilla. The human had somehow increased its power output by 20%. This should have been impossible without years of technical training. The human had figured it out in days. They adapt, the intelligence officer said quietly. Faster than any species we have ever encountered. Every battle teaches them. Every weapon they capture becomes a lesson. Every tactic we use, they learn to counter. And they share this knowledge instantly across their entire population. And stared at the reports. His easy conquest had become a quagmire. His superior forces were being bled dry by an enemy that refused to fight properly. And with every passing day, that enemy grew stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. He had expected to break humanity in days, weeks at most. Instead, humanity was breaking his army. One captured human soldier was brought before interrogators. They expected fear. They expected pleading. Instead, the human just smiled. "You know what your mistake was," the human said. "You thought our divisions made us weak. You were wrong. We've been preparing for something like you our whole existence. We just didn't know it until now." The interrogators reported that the human laughed as they took him away. Laughed, as if he knew something they did not, as if he could see a future they could not imagine. High Commander N was beginning to understand. He had not invaded a primitive world. He had invaded a pressure cooker of violence and adaptation. He had awakened something ancient and terrible, something that had been waiting for a challenge worthy of its full attention. For the first time in his long career, and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. 3 months after the invasion began, the controlled less territory than they had in week 1. Their losses mounted daily. Their soldiers feared the ground missions that had once been routine, and in laboratories hidden deep beneath Earth's surface, humanity was preparing its next surprise. Doctor had not slept in 4 days. The captured plasma rifle sat on her workbench, its alien components spread out like a mechanical autopsy. She had been studying energy weapons her entire career. Theory only, of course. Humanity had never built anything like this. But now she had a working example in front of her, and she was determined to understand it. "The power cycling mechanism uses a crystalline matrix," she muttered into her recorder. "It stores and releases energy in pulses. The efficiency is remarkable, but there are improvements possible. The crystal structure has impurities that limit power output. If we could synthesize a version." 72 hours after she started, Doctor understood how the weapon worked. 48 hours after that, she had designed a better version. Within a week, factories around the world were producing human-made plasma rifles. Within a month, those rifles were in the hands of soldiers. This was humanity's greatest weapon, not their courage, not their unity, their ability to learn, adapt, and improve at a speed that should have been impossible. High Commander and received the reports with growing dread. Plasma weapons in human hands, human-designed improvements that his own engineers said should have taken decades to develop. The technological gap that had guaranteed victory was shrinking with terrifying speed. "How is this possible?" he demanded at his daily briefing. "They had chemical propulsion 3 months ago. Now they are matching our weapons technology." His chief scientist, a nervous creature named Os, tried to explain. "Commander, we have analyzed human scientific progress. Their rate of advancement is unlike anything in our records. They developed nuclear weapons within 6 years of discovering nuclear fission. They reached their moon 12 years after their first orbital flight. They created global communication networks in less than 1 generation. When faced with a problem, they throw every resource at solving it. And they solve it faster than any species we have studied. Then why were they not a galactic power when we arrived? Because they were not united. Their progress was slowed by their internal conflicts. Different nations competed rather than cooperated. Knowledge was hoarded rather than shared. But now, Oz trailed off. Now they are united and finished, and they have a single problem to solve. Yes, Commander, us. The implications were staggering. They had developed their civilization over thousands of years of steady, careful advancement. They planned in centuries. They improved their technology gradually, testing and refining each step. This was how all successful species operated. Humans did not operate this way. Humans threw themselves at problems with reckless intensity. They tried 100 approaches at once. They failed constantly, learned from each failure and tried again. They accepted losses that would have paralyzed other species, and they succeeded at a pace that seemed almost supernatural. And began studying human history in detail. What he found disturbed him more than any battlefield report. In 1 century, humans had gone from horses and sailing ships to nuclear reactors and space stations. In 1 decade, they had transformed their entire society with digital technology. In 1 year, they had developed treatments for diseases that should have taken generations to understand. And now they had a war to win. General stood before the United Earth Council, presenting the latest achievements. The mood in the room was cautiously optimistic. Our scientists have reverse-engineered shield technology, she reported. We cannot yet produce full planetary shields, but we have developed personal barriers for ground troops. Casualty rates have dropped by 60%. A murmur of approval rippled through the council. Additionally, our engineers have completed the first prototype of a hybrid spacecraft. It combines captured propulsion systems with human design principles. Initial tests show it can match craft in speed and maneuverability. How long until we can produce these in quantity? The American representative asked. Factories are being converted now. Within 2 months, we will have an operational fleet. Within 6 months, we will have enough ships to challenge orbital superiority. The council members exchanged glances. 6 months ago, humanity had no space combat capability at all. Now they were planning to take the fight to the stars. But humanity was not just learning to match they were learning to surpass them. Deep in a research facility in Switzerland, a team of physicists was working on captured communication equipment. The aliens used something called quantum entanglement for instant communication across vast distances. Humanity had theorized about this technology but never achieved it. Dr. James, leading the research team, had a different approach. He was not trying to copy the system. He was trying to improve it. Their design is elegant but limited, he explained to his colleagues. They can only maintain stable entanglement between 2 points, but if we introduce a third variable, a stabilizing field, we could potentially create networks. Instant communication between unlimited points. That is theoretically impossible, one scientist protested. Smiled. Everything we have done in the last 3 months was theoretically impossible. Let us see what we can actually do. Across the planet, similar scenes played out in countless laboratories. Scientists attacked technology with the same ferocity that soldiers attacked troops. They did not just want to understand it. They wanted to master it. They wanted to make it their own. High Commander and received intelligence reports that tracked human technological progress. Each report was worse than the last. Weapons, shields, propulsion, communications, medicine. Every field showed explosive advancement. The humans were not crawling toward capability. They were sprinting. He sent urgent requests to the Dominion High Council, asking for reinforcements. The response came back quickly. It was not what he wanted. Reinforcements, the message read. Dominion fleets required for operations in the outer sectors. Complete your conquest with current forces. And stared at the message in disbelief. The High Council did not understand. They could not understand. They were thousands of light years away, dealing with their own problems. They did not see what he saw. He was not fighting a conquest anymore. He was fighting for survival. On Earth, humanity worked through days and nights. Scientists forgot about sleep. Engineers forgot about rest. Soldiers forgot about everything except victory. A species that had wasted so much energy fighting itself now directed all that energy toward a single goal. That had given humanity something it had never had before, a common purpose, a shared enemy, a reason to become something greater than they had ever been. And humanity was rising to meet the challenge, not slowly, not gradually, but with explosive, terrifying speed. High Commander and watched the latest intelligence reports and made a decision. He would not wait for humanity to catch up. He would throw everything he had at Earth now, while he still had the advantage. He did not realize that his window had already closed. He did not know that humanity had already surpassed his expectations. He did not understand that the pressure of his invasion had compressed centuries of human progress into months. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the invasion began, a small human spacecraft approached the flagship. The ship was ugly by any standard. It was a patchwork of captured alien technology and human engineering. Its design was rough, but it flew through space like it belonged there. High Commander and watched the approaching vessel with confusion. His sensors could barely track it. Somehow, the humans had developed stealth technology that matched capabilities. 6 months ago, they had been using chemical rockets. "Should we destroy it, Commander?" his weapons officer asked. "No, let us see what they want. One small ship cannot threaten us." This was his second mistake of the day. His first had been waking up that morning. The ship requested permission to dock, against the advice of his officers, and granted it. He was curious. What message were the humans trying to send? Were they finally ready to surrender, or were they foolish enough to attempt some kind of negotiation? The airlock opened. 12 humans walked onto the flagship. They wore strange armor that seemed to blend into the shadows. Their faces were calm. Their movements were precise. These were not diplomats. Commander James led the team. He was not the scientist who had cracked communications. That was his brother. James had a different specialty. He had spent 20 years in special operations. He had trained to fight in environments that would kill ordinary soldiers. He had led missions that officially never happened. Now he led the most important mission in human history. Commander and said through the translator device, "You are brave to come here, or perhaps foolish. What do you want?" Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. "We are here to deliver a message, Commander, and to give you a choice." "A choice? You are 12 creatures on a ship with 4,000 of my best soldiers. You have no position to offer choices." "We will see." Reached into his pocket, every weapon in the room trained on him, but he only pulled out a small device no larger than his thumb. He pressed a button. Every light on the ship went out. For 3 seconds the flagship was completely dark. When emergency lighting came on, the crew found themselves facing a nightmare. Their weapons did not work. Their communications were silent. Their engines were offline. 4,000 soldiers with the most advanced technology in the sector, and they were suddenly helpless. "What did you do?" and demanded. "We sent you a virus," explained. "Your security systems are impressive, but they were designed to stop intrusion. They were not designed for us. We think differently than you. We approach problems from angles you cannot imagine. Your best engineers spent 1,000 years building these defenses. Our teenagers cracked them in 3 weeks." This was not entirely true. The virus had been developed by a team of the world's best hackers, recruited from universities, corporations, and yes, a few bedrooms where brilliant young minds had spent years finding flaws in supposedly secure systems. Humanity had turned its criminals and misfits into weapons and tried to process what was happening. His flagship, the pride of his fleet, had been disabled by a handful of primitives. Around him, his officers stood frozen, their weapons useless, their training worthless. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Look outside," and turned to the viewport. What he saw made his heart stop. Human ships surrounded his fleet, not dozens, hundreds. They had appeared from nowhere, their stealth systems hiding them until this moment. They were not as large as warships. They were not as elegant, but there were so many of them, and each one bristled with weapons. General's voice came through on an emergency frequency that should have been impossible to access. "Commander N, your flagship is disabled. Your fleet is surrounded. We have neutralized your orbital advantage. Earth is no longer under your control." And looked at the human ships. 6 months ago, humanity had not had a single space combat vessel. Now they had a fleet they had built from nothing, using technology they had stolen and improved. "How?" he whispered. "You gave us motivation," replied. "You gave us a reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting together. You gave us access to technology we could never have developed alone. And you gave us 6 months. That was your biggest mistake, Commander. You gave humanity time." The implications crashed over him like a wave. He had not just lost a battle. He had lost the war. Every day he had spent on Earth had been a day for humanity to grow stronger. Every weapon his troops had lost had been a lesson for human engineers. Every tactic his officers had used had been studied and countered. He had thought time was on his side. He had been catastrophically wrong. "You have a choice," continued. "You can order your fleet to withdraw from our solar system. You can return to your dominion and report your failure, or you can fight. And if we fight, then we will destroy you, not quickly. We have learned patience from this war. We will take apart your fleet ship by ship. We will capture your technology. We will improve it. And then we will come for the dominion itself." And saw no bluff in the human's eyes. This was not a threat. It was a promise. "You would pursue us across the galaxy for revenge." Shook his head. "Not revenge, security. You have shown us that the galaxy is dangerous. You have shown us that we cannot stay on one planet and hope to survive. So we will expand. We will grow. We will make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. The Dominion will send more fleets, larger fleets. We are counting on it. Every fleet you send will teach us more. Every battle will make us stronger. And eventually, your reinforcements will arrive to find that we are no longer defending. We will be attacking." The bridge was silent. 4,000 soldiers, the finest warriors in the sector, stood helpless while 12 humans dictated terms. General spoke again. "You have 1 hour to decide, Commander. Withdraw or die. Those are your only options." And looked at his officers. He looked at the human ships outside his viewport. He looked at the small device in his hand that had crippled his entire flagship. For 3,000 years they had been conquerors. They had never faced defeat. They had never known what it felt like to be the weaker species. Now anew. "We will withdraw," he said. The words tasted like poison. Nodded. "Smart choice. You may keep your lives. You may not keep your dignity. But that was lost the moment you decided to invade our world." The human team returned to their ship. The virus was disabled. Power returned to the flagship, but nothing else returned. Not pride, not confidence, not the certainty that they were masters of the stars. As his fleet limped away from Earth and watched the blue planet shrink in his viewport, he had come here expecting easy victory. He was leaving with nothing but shame and fear. Behind him, humanity celebrated, but the celebration was brief. There was work to do, a galaxy to explore, a future to build, that had shown them the stakes of cosmic existence. Humanity would not forget the lesson. 1 year after the invasion ended, a human ship arrived at the edge of space. It was not a warship, though it could have been. Humanity had plenty of those now. This vessel was designed for diplomacy. Its weapons were hidden. Its message was peace. Ambassador stood at the bridge, watching the home system grow larger on her screens. She was 53 years old. She had spent 30 years as a diplomat, negotiating conflicts between nations that hated each other. Now she would negotiate with an alien species that had tried to enslave her world. She was not nervous. She had faced worse odds before. The High Council met in a chamber that had witnessed 3,000 years of conquest planning. The counselors sat in their ancient seats, surrounded by symbols of their power. They had ruled the stars. They had crushed civilizations without counting them. They had never apologized. They had never negotiated. Now they waited for a human to address them. Ambassador walked into the chamber alone. She was small compared to the towering. Her body was fragile. Her was brief. By every measure the valued, she should have been insignificant. But every being in that room knew what her species had done. "Honored counselors," began, her voice steady, "I come with a message from Earth. I come to speak of the past and the future. I come to offer you a choice." The High Counselor, an ancient creature named, leaned forward. "You come to gloat, to display your victory over our commander." "No, I come to prevent more death. I come to build something better than war." This surprised the counselors. They had expected threats, demands, perhaps even an ultimatum. Humans had earned the right to be aggressive. They had proven themselves in battle. Instead, this small creature spoke of peace. "You attacked our world," continued. "You killed thousands of our people. You tried to enslave our species. We could hate you for this. Many of my people do hate you. They want revenge. They want to burn through your empire and make you suffer as we suffered." She paused, letting the words settle. "But we are not here to pursue revenge. We are here to offer you something else, a chance to be our allies instead of our enemies." The council chamber erupted in confused murmurs. This was not how conquered species behaved. This was not how any species behaved. When you had power over someone, you used it. This was the fundamental law of the galaxy. "Why would you offer this?" demanded. "You have defeated our fleet. You have stolen our technology. Our intelligence reports say your advancement continues at impossible speed. In 50 years, perhaps less, you will surpass everything the Dominion has achieved. You could destroy us. Why offer alliance instead?" Smiled, it was a warm smile, not threatening. "Because destruction is easy, building is hard, and we are tired of easy." She began to walk slowly around the chamber, speaking to each counselor in turn. "You see, we have learned something about ourselves in this past year. We are very good at fighting. We are very good at winning. When you gave us a common enemy, we united faster than anyone thought possible. We turned your weapons against you. We improved your technology beyond your imagination. We showed the galaxy what humanity can do when we work together. Then why not use this power? Because power without purpose is meaningless. We do not want to become the next Dominion. We do not want to spend our future conquering worlds and enslaving species. That path leads nowhere. The galaxy is vast. There are threats out there that neither of us can face alone. Dangers that require cooperation, not conquest." Shook his head. "You speak of cooperation with the species that tried to destroy you. This is not wisdom. This is foolishness." "Perhaps, or perhaps it is strength that you cannot understand," stopped in the center of the chamber. "We have a saying on Earth, what does not kill us makes us stronger. You thought this was primitive superstition. You were wrong. It is a fundamental truth of our species. Every challenge we face, we overcome. Every enemy we fight, we learn from. Every setback we suffer, we turn into advancement." She looked directly at the High Counselor. "You tried to kill us. You failed. And now we are stronger than ever. Stronger than you. Stronger than anything in this sector of the galaxy. And we are offering you friendship. And if we refuse, then we will leave. We will not attack you. We will not seek revenge. We will simply grow, expand, and become what we were always meant to be, a galactic power. and you will spend the rest of your civilization watching us rise, knowing that you could have been our partners instead of our observers." The council chamber fell silent. They had never faced this situation. Their entire history was built on conquest and domination. They did not know how to respond to an offer of genuine partnership. Looked at his fellow counselors. He saw uncertainty on their faces, fear, and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "What would this alliance involve?" he asked finally. "Trade, technology sharing, mutual defense. We learn from you. You learn from us. Together we explore the galaxy. Together we face whatever dangers await. And together we build something that neither species could build alone. You would share your technology with us, even after what we did. Especially after what you did. You showed us how dangerous the galaxy can be. We will not make the mistake of facing it alone, and neither should you." The counselors debated for hours. Some argued for rejection, some argued for war, but in the end the pragmatists won. Humanity was rising, fighting them was suicide. Joining them was the only path forward. The alliance was announced across both civilizations. Many were horrified. Many humans were furious. The wounds of war did not heal quickly, but the leaders on both sides understood the truth. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. Survival required cooperation, and humanity, despite everything that had been done to them, had chosen to forgive. Not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to see beyond revenge. Ambassador returned to Earth as a hero. She had prevented a war of extermination. She had turned enemies into allies. She had shown the galaxy what humanity could be at its best. But she knew this was only the beginning. Across the stars, other civilizations watched the human alliance with interest and concern. A new power had emerged, a species that had been attacked by one of the most fearsome empires in the galaxy and had not only survived but triumphed. A species that could have pursued revenge but chose partnership instead. Some civilizations began sending diplomatic probes toward Earth. Others prepared their defenses. All of them understood that the balance of power had shifted forever. In a small office on Earth, General Maya looked at the stars and thought about the future. 1 year ago, she had led humanity's desperate defense against invasion. Now she commanded a fleet that could challenge any power in the sector. But she did not want conquest. She wanted exploration, discovery, growth. That had shown humanity how big the galaxy really was. Now humanity would go out and meet it. On the ruins of the first landing site, a memorial stood. It honored the dead on both sides. Human and names were carved together in the stone. At the base, a simple message was written in 100 languages. We were attacked. We survived. We grew stronger. We chose peace. Let this memorial remind all who see it that enemies can become friends, and that the biggest mistake anyone can make is underestimating the power of hope. High Commander and, disgraced and retired, visited the memorial in secret. He stood before the names of his fallen soldiers and tried to understand what had happened. He had come to Earth expecting easy victory. He had found something else entirely, a species that refused to die, a species that turned every setback into strength, a species that, despite having every reason to seek revenge, had chosen a different path. He did not understand humans. He was not sure anyone ever would, but he was certain of one thing. The galaxy would never be the same. And somehow, against all logic and reason, that was a good thing. The story of the invasion became legend. It was told across the stars for generations. The tale of the primitive species that had faced the mighty and won. The tale of enemies who became allies. The tale of hope triumphing over hate. And at the heart of every telling was a simple truth. The biggest mistake the aliens ever made was attacking humanity. But their second biggest mistake was assuming that victory would lead to vengeance. Because in the end, humanity surprised everyone. including themselves.